Welcome again to another amazing episode of This Crappy Car. Chuck here. And what I have next to me is a 1999 Subaru EJ25D engine. It's called 25D. 25 because it's 2.5 liters, D because it's a double overhead cam. You see these two little nipple thingies? Nipples. And that means there's two camshafts underneath this cover, and that's what this is. This is a double overhead cam, 4-valve per cylinder engine, and it's a horizontally opposed layout. There's two cylinders aside, I can show you that. This one happens to be an automatic, and you can see by the flex plate. So I'm going to have to change this as part of this project here to get this thing pristine and working good. Sterling Mitchell. Hi, Sterling. How you doing? Great guy, by the way, Sterling. Sight unseen, gets on a plane, flies to Michigan, meets me, and goes across country with me, of all people, while we have an adventure moving my dad's machine tool equipment, which I now have here in my shop, and along with my hot rod. It was a grand adventure, and love you to death, Sterling. And that's why we're doing this episode, actually, because Sterling asked, he says, how do you know you're getting a good engine? And gospel truth, you don't. You don't know. But there are a few things you can do to reduce your chances of having a completely boogered up engine that you got to spend tons of money on to get running and do their thing. Now, off camera, sitting right in front of me is the dead engine from the Basurabu, which makes all sorts of mean, nasty, dirty, and ugly noises when it tries to run. It clatters. It doesn't make any power, and it's dead. It's dead on arrival. Dead. D-E-D, dead. This engine, however, I'm hoping isn't so bad, but I want to go through with you the things you should check to see whether or not you got a halfway decent engine. First thing, when you're in the yard, at least here in California, the yards, when they take a vehicle from a donation place or they take it in because it was totaled in an accident, they put these big honking stickers on the car which share the VIN number, the year, the model, the make, and the mileage. So some vehicles will have miles on them. This came out of a car that was donated, and the mileage on it was 190,000. Well, considering the Basura had a 215,000 mile engine, this is a little better. Still a lot of miles, but you know, for a couple $100, what are you going to do? Well, what you can do, and let me grab a rag here so we can take a look at it. Hang on a second, got to get my rag. Ah! Nothing up my sleeve. Anyway, what you got to do, let me just set this over here. Hopefully you'll stand up for me. Will you stand up? Ooh, that. Okay, so one of the things you do is you take the plug out. Now keep in mind these guys drain all the fluids out of these things, so they're pretty much empty, but there's usually a little bit left in here. If I open up this plug and let it run for a second or two, or longer because I can't get the plug back in, arg. There we go. You can get the oil out and have a look at it. And what we're seeing is the oil itself, it's not bad. It's not dead black, it's kind of brownish, and that means that the engine seals were sealing, but what I'm really looking for is a lot of metal bits in here, and I see a couple. There's a couple of little finds here and there, but it's not bad. So this engine, the oil looks pretty decent. There's not like it's metallic colored. There are some fines in it, but you're going to find a little bit of fines in pretty much any engine, actually. They're not completely fine-free. They have a way of discharging small bits of metal. The older they get, the more they discharge. So the oil's not bad on this. Like, I'd say it gets a passing grade. Well, duh, I brought it home, so I thought it did at the time. The other thing you want to do on an overhead cam engine like this, one of the catastrophic modes of failure is the belt breaks, and then you've got bent valves and all sorts of dirty, nasty, ugly things going on in the engine. So you take the cover off, and look, I took this off so we could do this quickly. And lo and behold, the timing belt is still in place. Now, further examination of this engine shows, and this is kind of cool actually, you see this damage right here? It did break timing belt at one point. And there's some other stuff in here, like when I removed the flex plate, I found two different size bolts. One had a 12mm head, the other had a 13. So that tells me this engine was out at some point and worked on. And I'm guessing that it threw a belt and they had to take it apart. So I look for a couple other clues. And one of the clues I look for is, and it's really hard to see in here, but on these you can actually see the head gasket. This is a multi-layer steel gasket. So this engine has been torn apart and put back together at some point. So at this point I'm pretty excited because the engine looks very solid. The other thing I want to look at are various leaks. I want to see if the engine leaks from stuff. And leaks have a very specific pattern, and I look at the back of these to see what's going on here, and it turns out that again, multi-layer steel gasket, it's not wet there or here, it's just got a little bit of dirt and debris, which indicates that this engine really didn't leak all that much. However, there is a big honking pile of oil up here. You can kind of see it all in here. Turns out this is from the power steering pump. The power steering pump leaked on this vehicle, and that oil found its way across the top of the engine and all the way back through here, and would leak through this hole, down in through here, and then down the back, and it leaked pretty profusely. There's also a cover back here, which you can see that's right here, and there's a little bit of RTV sealant. So I know this engine was taken completely apart at some point, and somebody resealed everything. So I'm pretty excited at this point. I'm thinking, wow, I might have a pretty decent engine here. So the last thing that I like to do is for lack of a better term, we're going to call it a redneck compression check. And to do that, with the plugs in neutral, it's really easy now because it's on the standard, it's neutral. I'm going to take and I'm going to rotate this a quarter of a turn, and I'm going to do that until I've cycled all 4 cylinders. And you'll see it because after I go over top dead center, the compression will force the engine to flop. Ready? Let's go. There's one good cylinder. You saw it flop. There's another good cylinder. We got 2 good cylinders. You saw it flop. Three good cylinders. I got a flop out of that one too. So I've got halfway decent compression in at least 3 cylinders. So let's check the 4th now. I didn't get anything, or very little. So just do that again. Let's go back. I didn't get much. I can do a compression test on it now, but I think I will. But I think what I'm going to find is that at some point in its life, when it lost its timing timing belt, it probably bent a valve. So I'm guessing I've got a bent valve over here. But it feels like everything else is pretty good. Based on the noise, which you couldn't hear off camera, then I believe it's on this side. So that's what I'll do, is I'll pull the plugs and I'll put my compression tester in there, turn it over by hand, and see what I get. A cylinder that I thought was a problem, which was this one, which is I gotta look, 1. Number 1 here actually showed a compression hand cranked of 90 pounds, which is really something. Number 3 over here was 60 pounds, which is kind of what I expected cranking by hand. I was really surprised to get 90 out of this one. However, there was some oil on this spark plug. These plugs, 3 of the plugs were original to the engine, 190,000 miles on plugs. Can you believe that? This one was a real bugger, number 4 to take out. This one was at 60. And it turns out our offending plug or hole was number 2. Number 2 here was, well, about 2 pounds. and you could hear a hiss from the exhaust port, which is down here somewhere. Hello, exhaust port. Hi, how you doing? Right there. You could hear a hiss from that exhaust port. So I'm thinking I got a bad valve on number 2, and that's why it's, you know, the way it is. The engine, when I roll it over, it doesn't make noise like that one does, so I'm thinking everything's good there. But I'm going to have to tear this thing completely apart and do a refresh on it, which is fine. You know, it's going to cost me about $100 for a set of gaskets and torque-heeled head bolts, and I already have the timing belt kit, so, you know, for less than $500, I'll have a fairly fresh engine that I can throw in the white trash Subaru, otherwise known as a Basurabu, and hopefully get a few miles out of it. We'll see. Well, I'll keep you posted as things progress. For Chuck Sherman, it's This Crappy Car, and as always, enjoy the ride.